Hello and welcome to a look at Flight of the Amazon Queen for the Amiga, a game that was developed by Interactive Binary Illusions and released by Renegade. To summarize the background plot, Joe King is scheduled to fly actress Faye Russell to the Amazon jungle to get her to her location for the shooting of her next film. But his rival, a Dutch flyboy called Anderson, is trying to head him off by locking him up in a hotel room and take Faye Russell to the jungle so as to nick the commission from Joe, effectively running him out of business. Joe's first objective, of course, is to escape from the hotel room that he, if you look at the video, has been just locked in. And upon doing so, escape the hotel and chase Anderson, and then take the adventure from that point onwards. You start the game being locked up in the hotel room, but escaping the hotel room is only the first of two hurdles, because of course Anderson has placed some of his goons at the hotel entrance to prevent Joe from leaving, so Joe has to find a way to get around that little issue before he can actually leave the hotel. As you can likely gather from the gameplay, Flight of the Amazon Queen is a point-and-click adventure. You could argue similar to many other point-and-click adventures, but it has a few unique things going for it, and I will return to them later. As a point-and-click adventures go, you have various different commands that you can use with various different objects, like pick up, open, close, give, look at, walk to, that kind of stuff. And of course you also have an inventory, but depending on what game you are playing, you could have a limited inventory, but for this particular title, if there's something you need, you can pick it up and you can store it in your inventory. So your inventory is as large as it needs to be, which is always a good thing. The point-and-click adventure genre was a natural progression from originally the text-only adventures, some of them absolutely epically great, by the way, to the semi-text, semi-point-and-click style of later King's Quest games, where you were moving around, clicking on objects, and then typed in what you want to do with said object or person or whatever else it might have been. And of course, we finally ended up with a full-fledged point-and-click system where you use the mouse for everything you need to do. In that regard, this game is no different than many other point-and-click adventures, but thankfully it has shortcut keys for the commands available, so O is open, G is give, and so on and so on. Left click will default to moving Joe around, and right click will have a default action attached to what you are trying to do. So something like walk to a door and open a door, or use an item in your inventory, or something similar. But the game offers you an option to attach a certain function to an item. So if you always want to use a certain item and it defaults to look at the item, you can assign use as the default option, which is very cute and not entirely useless idea. Let's cover the technical side of things. From a graphical point of view, I think there's little doubt that the overarching quality of this game is very, very high. Bear in mind, of course, that the general graphical style was more or less defined by Secret of the Monkey Island, and the character graphics in this particular title is very, very similar to the style used in that game, but cleaned up, you could say. The game is set in 1949, and of course, when it comes to games and films for that matter, that's set in a certain period, it is very, very important that the graphical aspect reflects that period, and I would argue that this game reflects that period in the most excellent way. The color choices are fairly decent. They are not necessarily super excellent, but that is due to one of the aspects of this game that I will come back to later on. When you speak to important people, you will get a close-up of their face, and you can see their reactions to various different comments. I think the graphical difference between the in-game normal graphics and the close-up graphics is perhaps a bit too distinct. It's a bit like Cruise for a Corpse, where you get a very detailed close-up of people when you speak to them, and the style of graphics used in those scenarios in this particular game is a bit more stylish than the in-game normal graphics. The sound design, the sound effects are present, but I don't feel they really do much. It's not that they are bad in any way, shape or form, it's just because you have the background music playing at all times, you don't particularly notice the sound effects. The game does give you an option to disable the sound effects or the music if you should so desire, but games like these are usually defined. The tone and theme of the game, I should say, is usually defined by the background music, so it is not something that personally I would want to disable. And speaking of the music, it's very fitting for the game. It suits the type of game and style of game and the general period of the game, but I find it to be a bit like elevator music, and not something that you particularly find super exciting, but not something that really bothers you either. It's not bad, but I just think it could do with a bit more, I don't know, get up and go, if you could call it that. The controls are perfectly fine. The mouse control is responsive, and the fact that you can use keyboard shortcuts to activate whatever commands you want to use is a very, very nice thing, and it was something that became more and more common, but not all games had that option. So control-wise, I can't really complain. While the story has a certain Indiana Jones-esque feel to it, it's definitely the humor that is the highlight of this game's storytelling. You could argue that humor is a question of taste, and certain commenters have said that this game is hilariously funny, and certain other commenters have said that this game is hilariously not funny, so mileage may vary. Personally, I found a good chunk of the humor to be a bit forced, and it didn't make me giggle, it didn't make me cry. I could take it or leave it. Yeah, as I said, an individual thing. The puzzles are by and large very logical. You don't have to pick up every single object in your inventory and click on every single object in the game hoping that something comes out of it. You will likely find 2 or 3 places where you could be a bit stumped, but by and large things should pan out to be solvable without too much effort. And that is a complaint point from certain people saying that it is too easy. But again, that is an individual thing. Certain people will find something incredibly easy and other people will find the same thing incredibly difficult. So you can't just say that one size fits all. Personally, I think it is nice when a game allows you to progress at a steady pace without you necessarily having to be stumped for months on end trying to work out what the heck even the designer was trying to get you to do in order to progress. Early on, I mentioned that there were some unique aspects concerning this title. And first and foremost, certain people have been calling this version a conversion, which is actually not true. This is an Amiga original title, and a surprisingly large chunk of it was done in the intermediate programming language Amos and then converted to C. Later on, an MS-DOS version was released, but it is an Amiga original game. Secondly, as a 1995 release, you could be surprised by the fact that this is an OCS/ACS release and not an AGA release, which you could possibly expect to be the norm at that point. Thankfully, the graphical quality is high enough that the 256 color palette available to the AGA's chipset wouldn't necessarily be required, but it would have been nice to get the full experience. But you may have noticed at the start of the video that certain voice actors were credited for their performance, which of course would mean that the voice work had already been done. The Amiga never got the voiced version of this game. What we got was 11 floppy disks that we could install onto a hard drive if we had one available, but if you are in a lovely position of only having one floppy drive in order to cut down disk access, all sound effects were disabled, and you could likely imagine it would have been incredibly painful to play this game with one floppy drive. It would have been so much nicer if this had been a CD release. Not only because of the fact that you could get hold of the voiced version of the game, but also due to the fact that this particular title didn't sell particularly well, which is likely why the Amiga never got the voiced version. But if it had been released as an AGA and voiced version from the start, I personally think this game would have been far more appealing and far more attractive to own for more people. It's not great, it's not bad, it's entirely enjoyable, entirely playable, and that's going to be my way of saying thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.